All right, we are now recording. Welcome everyone to Signature. We're so thrilled to have each of you here, whether this is your first or your last session of the week. We are so glad that you could all make it today. I am Morgan, I'm the Western District President, and I will be giving this presentation today on dates and deadlines for the rest of the year for the Western District. All right, so if you'll give me one moment for some screen sharing here, I will pull up my PowerPoint. All right, can everyone see this lovely presentation over here? Awesome, glad to hear it. Oh, now you're seeing other things. I have my windows out of order. There we go. All right, so today we are going to talk about a wide variety of dates, namely including paperwork, programming, awards and scholarships, and conventions. And then I'm going to give you some suggestions for planning ahead for each of those, since some of those do require a couple of weeks of prep. And finally, I will go over some more specific tips on how to plan travels for conventions and setting up your chapter for success with scheduling. As we go through these events, please do ask questions, as I love to answer questions so much. So please do ask any that you think of. The one request that I do have is that we discuss these in-person events with some hope. We're already pushing our summer and fall plans to online formats, but our current plan is to have our spring events in person. The National Council will let us know if we need to cancel any of those in-person events and move them online, at which point we'll begin altering our plans. But since we're hoping to keep all of these events in person, I'd like to ask that we keep this discussion focused on our plans instead of worrying too much about the what-ifs, because that can get really overwhelming really fast. I would also like to make one note here. I have a lot of dates to present to you that can be also kind of overwhelming. I'm going to try and break them down in a way that makes sense, but I do have a couple different formats depending on how you think things through. So I have some visual formats, and then Sarah has also made us a very lovely sheet that shows everything in list format and has some color coding and everything. So depending on how you think, don't panic too much if this looks a little overwhelming to you. We will get you a format that works for your thinking style. All right. So first on our schedule, we have paperwork. While it is ultimately the president's responsibility to submit this, it is still excellent that everyone is here learning about it. There's a lot for the president to manage, and they will likely need the chapter's help to get all of this done. The first thing to note with this paperwork is that it's really not as intimidating as it looks. I'm here to help you with it. I'll be doing some walkthroughs for the trickier or longer ones, and most of these items are very straightforward and short, like entering a couple of names and submitting short. So really straightforward stuff here. There just seems like there's a lot of it, but it's not that bad. You just need to make sure that it gets into the correct dates, and I will help you with that one. To start, we have two big reports due during the year, one at the end of the fall and one at the end of the spring. Can anyone here remember what those reports are called? Okay, I'll give you a hint. The first one you've just completed. It happened on June 1st. Does anyone remember that one?
There's an answer in the chat.
Ah, I am able to see the chat now. Awesome. Yes, perfect. So the one that's due on June 1st is the chapter summary report. And the one that's due on December 1st is the fall activity report. These are very similar. They're just going over what happened during each semester. These are going to be your most time-consuming reports for the entire year. They do ask questions about finances, membership, service projects, and social activities. So it is a fair amount of work that you will probably need a lot of help from your council on. And an important thing to note is that your report not only needs to be complete, but also have sponsor and DOB approval by the due date in order to be considered on time. So you will need to budget time for those guys to take a look. The other required paperwork that we have on OMRS is chapter personnel report, which is due for semester schools in September and for quarter schools in October. This one is really straightforward, but you do still need to leave time for your sponsor and DOB to approve it. And that is due the 30th of September and the 15th of October. Keep in mind, quarter schools, that this is not much of an addition. You do only have another 15 days, but you can get started on things before your semester starts for sure. The other important thing here is the officer and chapter update, which you will need to do within 30 days of an election. So you've likely just recently completed at least one of these, depending on how many elections you've had this spring. You may have completed a couple. You may also do these in December. Some chapters have a transition there where they switch for officers who are graduating. So just keep that in mind anytime you have an election of even just one person, you will need to fill this out. And then another item is the graduating senior report. This is due within 30 days of a graduation, so keep that in mind around December, and then again in May, June, whenever you guys have your graduation. Does anyone have any questions on these so far?
I have a question on the graduating senior report.
Yeah, go for it.
Is that within 30 days of like a commencement, or 30 days within the last day of the semester they were going to graduate for?
So technically for most schools, graduation of a student, what they'll put on your actual, like when you get your full, what's the word I'm looking for? Your certificate of graduation. Once you get that, the date that's printed on that is, at least to all of the schools that I have seen, it's the last day that you had class. So that's worth keeping in mind. It should be not far off for most schools, within a couple of days, but that is technically not the date of the commencement ceremony.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so next we will look at membership paperwork. These two items only apply if you take a membership class, which I know some of you guys are not doing this fall, but it will apply again in the spring if you decide to take a spring class. And those items are membership candidate registration, which is just requiring some contact information and a signature from every candidate. It does need to be completed within 7 days of first degree, and it's really important that you think ahead on this one, because 7 days to get contact information from all of them, and then on top of that have signatures, is kind of a tight turnaround unless you're planning ahead carefully. So don't leave that one until the 7th day. Definitely a very important note there. And then initiate registration is due within 30 days of the 3rd degree. You do have a little bit more time there to turn that one in. It also is very straightforward. It just asks for who was initiated, and it asks if anyone wasn't initiated, what happened, why did they not get initiated? But it's like a 5-minute form. It's very simple. Do we have any questions on these membership paperwork items? Awesome. So the next significant thing that you'll have to think about this year is turning in fees. That item can be kind of tricky because there are 2 different deadlines for fees. There's the chapter fee and the membership dues due with your September or October deadline. And then there's the initiate registration, which is due whenever you initiate your members. So these fees have changed, not this year, but last year. So if you're looking at an older handbook, this week we had somebody who was a little confused because they checked a handbook from 2017. Those are no longer accurate. The current chapter fee is $100, and that's from the chapter as a whole, split between all of your members. Membership dues for active members is $105 per active member, and then the initiate registration dues for each new initiate is $125 per new initiate. And that difference is largely due to some extra paperwork things that have to happen and the addition of paying for your membership pins and everything. So there's a $25 gap there, but it's not super significant. These chapter fee and membership dues are due by September 30th for semester schools and October 15th for quarter schools. And the initiate registration fees will need to be turned in within 30 days of your 3rd degree. And your 3rd degree is reported in your paperwork ahead of time. I believe that's part of the membership candidate registration. So make sure that you have the correct date on there. because that is the date they'll use when considering when you're on time. And those dates are September, October, and then down here with initiate dues. Are we all still keeping up here? Is there anything that's gotten confusing? Awesome. And then we do have two more important items that are not technically, yes, 30 calendar days. These are not items that are due on OMRS, but they are still very important. There's the membership education plan, and hopefully your VPMs are making some serious progress on these if they have not finished already, as these are due tomorrow. So hopefully you guys are getting those in. I just talked to our district VPM and it sounds like we're in pretty good shape, but definitely check in with your VPM and make sure that those are getting submitted. Those are done through a Google form, which Erica and JJ have both sent out to VPMs, and that is for your fall plan. So if you're taking a fall class, you need to submit one of these. You also have a spring deadline, which is December 1st, and that's for if you're taking a spring class. And that just lists your plans for what sort of things you'll be doing with the candidates, what your recruitment will look like, all that kind of like, here's our layout for our plan for getting these guys initiated. And then our final item on here is a chapter budget and constitution. These are also due October 16th. They are due to your counselors. So you'll need to email to Sarah and Alexis. And it's important that you think pretty far ahead with these guys because it will take some time for you to write a updated budget or make any constitutional changes, and then also have your chapter vote on them to approve them before submitting them. So make sure that you plan in some time for those. Those are all of our paperwork items. Now, I know that it might look like a lot, but once you think about this is everything that you have to submit for the whole year, hopefully it is not too overwhelming. Does anyone have any questions on paperwork or anything? Awesome. So now we're going to talk about programming awards and scholarships, which are all things that are good for you to do, but they are not 100% mandatory like your paperwork items are. But definitely still do them because there's some really great stuff in here with Focus on 5, as well as some awesome scholarships that you could get and some awards that your chapter can win. First, we are going to have some Focus on 5 deadlines. Since this is something that has already been largely detailed yesterday in Hannah's workshop, I'm just going to make sure you have the dates here, but I do want to go over them so it can help you conceptualize all of the things you've got going on for the year. First, you will have the red stripe, which is the very first one due. Most of them you have a lot more time to work on, but the red stripe is kind of your getting into shape for the year. So as presidents, it's going to be the one you're going to be more involved with most likely. That does require submitting your budget and constitution. It also requires completing a risk management training, and you'll also want to have your Focus on 5 liaison appointed and in the Facebook group. So as president, it's important that you consider where those risk management trainings will fall into your schedule and when you're going to be doing that budget and constitution work. You'll also have your black stripe due in April, which is to host a National Intercollegiate Band recording session. That's for anyone who might want to audition for National Intercollegiate Band. And that is something that's due early as well because the National Intercollegiate Band needs auditions by the 15th so they can review them and then have people start, preparing to attend the band in July. Then we have our blue stripe, which is due the 1st. Also, green stripe and white stripe are due the 1st. Most of these due dates are at the last minute when you have hopefully finished your semester, so it gives you as much time as possible to get those done. In case you have not remembered, the blue stripe is to host a Women in Music panel and reception. Green stripe is Crescendo, and white stripe is Coda. Additionally, we do have our Focus on 5 lyre pieces again this year. The first one is our district lyre piece. Hannah has decided to have us all submit some nominations for district awards, which is awesome because we love quality nominations sent in for everybody we can think of who deserves them. So make sure that you submit some nominations by March 31st. Additionally, we have another deadline on June 1st, and that is the center lyre piece. That is participating in the fourth grader practice program for 3+ months. So you'll want to start that one long before June. Shoot for February or March at the latest, but try to get it done earlier than that so that your chapter has plenty of time to participate. And then finally, the right lyre is also very easy to complete, and that is seating a delegate at National Convention. So if you do have anyone in your chapter attending, all they have to do is just be there on time on July 13th and have them sit as a representative for your chapter. So that one's pretty straightforward. I know that's a lot of information. Do we have any questions so far? Does anyone need me to take a break for a minute so you can take notes or process? All right. I will continue on here with the rest of our programs. Along with the Black Stripe, I have mentioned the National Intercollegiate Band. For those of you who may not be aware, it's a really awesome opportunity. We host an event in July at National Convention where all of our best players of instruments from the entire nation are invited to come and perform. And it's a really amazing concert. I had the opportunity to go last year and it was fantastic. So we really like to encourage people to participate in that since that is one of our joint TBS KK-Psi programs. So if you would host some sort of audition between December 1st, which is when those auditions open, and April 15th, you do win that Black Stripe. And also encourage your chapters and also apply yourselves to do that application. It's really just, it's a recording, it's very brief, and they'll just review whatever you send in. A lot of people that I know have been actually surprised. They weren't so sure if they were going to apply, and then they did, and they actually got in and got to have a really great opportunity. So really encourage your sisters to do that one. And then that concert will be in July during National Convention. I had also mentioned awards with the left lyre. Our district award nominations will be March to April, depending on when our joint awards are announced. Our separate awards will definitely be due on the 31st. Joint awards depend, we'll decide that date a little bit closer to the event. And then our district awards, both joint and separate, will be presented in April at our Western District Convention. We also have some amazing national awards, and I'd really like to highlight those for a minute here because a lot of times we don't think about them because we don't see them as much at district stuff. But the Baton is an award for actives who exhibit outstanding leadership, and that is something that your chapter can nominate someone for. So if there's someone in your chapter who's doing amazing work this year, start thinking about that. That nomination is due March 1st. And then also you have the opportunity for the service certificate. This is given to chapters who exhibit excellent service to college and university bands, also due March 1st. It is limited to only chapters who meet all of their report and fee deadlines. So that's another incentive to make sure that you get everything submitted on time. And then if your sponsor is especially fantastic, you can also give them an award. And that is the Chapter Sponsor Award. It's for somebody who shows outstanding service to TBS or KK-Psi in their sponsor position, also due March 1st. This last one is our only rolling nomination, and that's the 4th grader band certificate. You can recognize outstanding musicians or visual performers in any band or music group, and they don't have to be in TBS or KK-Psi. So it's something we've used in the past as a great opportunity for recruitment, because you can show somebody in your band that, hey, we've noticed you and we think you're doing great things. You should really consider joining us because we think that you're really on top of it. So that's definitely something to consider. And then finally, we also have the Academic Achievement Program, which is something I think most chapters are not aware of. And that is a program in which you submit a report of all of your grades at the end of the term. And whoever has the highest GPA in their chapter for that term receives the Top Chapter Scholar Award. Any actives who have at least a 3.5 GPA that term receive an Outstanding Scholarship Award. And if your chapter has maintained at least a 2.75 GPA that term, you earn a chapter certificate of excellence. So that's pretty exciting because the chapter one might be a little trickier for your chapter, but whoever earns the highest of your chapter gets an award. That's pretty fantastic because that means no matter what you do, somebody is going to be recognized for their good work. And that one you can apply for anytime. It's just right after any semester or quarter finishes. All right, I'm gonna give you guys a second to breathe here because I know I just went through a lot of stuff. Do we have any questions? All right, so I'll move on now to scholarships, which are due on May 1st. And there are a bunch of scholarships available that I think a lot of us don't think about until maybe right before they're due when it's a little bit late to start an application. So let's start thinking about those nice and early. They are for junior or senior actives, and most of them require at least a 3.0 minimum GPA. But if you apply for these, I mean, you get free money from TBS, so why not at least apply? The first one is the National Scholarship for Outstanding Student Leaders. This recognizes someone who has been an outstanding leader of their band, TBS, their campus, and academics. We also have one for Outstanding Musical Achievement, and that one is specifically recognizing a distinguished musician. We have the National WAVA Scholarship for female actives who are entering the field of music education. And we have the National Legacy Scholarship for those who demonstrate business ability in their TBS chapter or band. So these are all some great opportunities that you should let your chapters know about and make sure that lots of us apply. Because especially this year, when many of us are under some financial hardship, it would definitely be very helpful to have some of these awards. And after this event happens, after we finish signature, I will be sending out some guides with some links to these things as well. But these are all also very easy to find on our website. It's literally just tbsigma.org/scholarships. And same for awards, tbsigma/awards. And then we have two more dates, and these are for the podium. The podium spring issue is due in December. And then the fall issue is due May 1st. So if you have any ideas on things that you would like to write for our national publication, I'm sure lots of our sisters would love to read about it. So definitely have your chapter submit some sort of a article or something to the podium. And as long as you get it in by these dates, they will be considered to share with the entire nation, which is pretty awesome. All right, how are we feeling? We doing pretty good? We need a breather? All right, we will move on to our last set of deadlines here. And these are not so much deadlines as dates, and they are perhaps the most fun and exciting dates to think about, and that's conventions. We have a bunch this year, which is really exciting. This is a national convention year, so we do have that happening. But our very first convention is State Days. That's in March. And we have not selected specific dates or hosts this early, but we will be sending out requests to people to host this in a few weeks here. And the Joint Council does expect to have these in early to mid March. And for those of you who have not been, that is a more casual event that is more focused on sisterhood and a little bit of service. We don't do business there. We don't do a lot of, leadership workshops. It's mostly just to focus on your bonds jointly and as sisters. And those are held locally in each state, although the Western District, because we are a little spread out, is a little bit more on the states side. So we have WAGN, which is Washington, Oregon. They'll have those together. Calavada is California, Nevada. And then we have Utaho, which is Utah, Idaho, and then Arizona. They don't have a partner because they have lots of big chapters. So all of those chapters will get to hang out together jointly and do some really awesome things in March. Definitely keep an eye out for that one. It is one of our least expensive conventions because it's not a cross-country trip or anything. You're staying relatively close to home and you are staying with a host chapter member. You're not spending money on hotels. So that's definitely one to look forward to. Our biggest district convention is Western District Convention, which will be held in Seattle from April 16th to 18th. We're really excited for this one, especially because this is TVS's 75th year. So we're going to be having a big celebration about all the awesome things that we've done over the last 75 years. We'll also be doing all sorts of awesome things like having committees and having a reading band, doing all of our voting and business, doing elections. It's a lot of really great opportunities to get involved at a bigger level, especially since any member can really be on any of the committees that they want to and participate as much as they'd like. So it's a great opportunity. And then we have our national convention in July, which is very exciting. We'll be having that in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And that will be very similar to the Western District Convention, just on a much larger scale. You'll get to meet people from all over the nation, from both organizations. And we will be having an even bigger 75th anniversary, and everyone will be having a great time there. I'm sure of it. I can't wait to go myself. And finally, we have a tentative signature scheduled for shortly after National Convention. Whether that's in person or online depends a lot. It may, be something that the next council messes around with the scheduling a little bit, but it's something to consider planning for sure. And that is all of our dates for the year. Don't panic looking at this. I just wanted to illustrate how everything fits together. I'm sure you can't read it, but that's what we'll be jumping into next. Is everyone still good? Do we have any questions? Is there anything that you would like me to dive into more? All right, so in this section, I'm going to combine all of these dates into one big calendar so that we can go through month by month and make sure that everyone has a good understanding of where all of these things line up together. Because considering all of these dates for the nation and the district, and then also considering all the dates for your own chapter, can get a little bit tricky sometimes if you don't plan carefully. So that's what we're going to do today, is plan so that we have everything ready to go for the rest of the year. So first, in August, we have some paperwork. We have the Fall Membership Education Plan, which is due tomorrow. So again, make sure your VPMs have addressed that, because they should have done that already. Have at least gotten started, but I know some of them are not actually taking a class this fall, so that's okay. Also, if you have your membership education plan in and you go ahead and get a class and you start first degrees within the month of August, good for you. That is speedy, so good job. And you will need to submit that membership candidate registration within 7 days. Something important to consider with that membership candidate registration is that you will need to get all of their signatures on time. So try and do that, if possible, right after the degree, when everyone's still in the room together. Try and get them, hand around a laptop or a phone or something, so that everyone can do all of that paperwork at once. And that way you're not chasing people down trying to get everything done on time, or waiting until the next week and finding out that someone's absent. Try and get that done really speedy. And then our next item here is reminding people about their dues. $100 plus whatever you decide to distribute for your chapter fee, plus whatever fees your chapter may charge for people to help sustain your chapter activities. That can be a lot to ask of somebody at the last minute, especially right now when a lot of people are financially struggling. So keep in mind that while the fees aren't due until September 30th or October 15th for quarter schools, you need to start reminding people to save up in advance, so that they don't wait until the last minute and then realize, I literally do not have that money for you. So make sure that everyone is reminded. I have here solidly way far in advance, remind them that those are coming up. Remind them again that those are coming up. This gives them an opportunity to start saving, to realize if there's any money problems that they'll have to worry about, so that if they do need to have some sort of a payment plan set up with you, they're aware of that in advance. And this also helps them, if they do decide to pay in advance, sending another reminder to them might say to them, let's just go ahead and pay this in August, because that would be really great for you. Is if everyone pays way far ahead of time, that means that you then don't have to stress about it at the last minute. And keep in mind that we also have our CPR coming up. So the month of September, there's a lot of dates in here about, have you started your CPR draft? Have you completed your CPR draft? And that is the chapter personnel report. That report is not very long or complicated. However, you do still need your sponsor and DOB to approve it before the due date. So try and get that done really early. If you want your sponsor and DOB to approve something, plan to submit it at least 2 weeks before the due date so that they have a chance to look at it. Especially right now, they may have a lot going on. Keep in mind that their schedules might be busy and they may not have time to look at something the day of. And then again, membership candidate registration is something that you might have in September, so keep that in mind. Another point with the membership candidate registration is that you can submit signed PDFs digitally now. That's something we started doing a year or two ago, so you don't have to mail them on paper. This means that you also have the ability to use an app on your phone or your computer for people to sign. So if you can't see people in person, you can send them a PDF and have them sign it using one of the many PDF signing apps that exist. Or if you are seeing them in person, you can go ahead and download that PDF on your phone and use an app that lets them sign with their finger so that you can get all those signatures really easily and not have to worry about, oh, I just saw this person, but I totally forgot to grab my papers to have them sign. You can just get it done really easily. So that is definitely something to look into. I would recommend the free app Adobe Print and Sign. It is the one that I've found easiest for people to use and definitely takes out a lot of the effort of trying to get signatures. And there's also some more reminders about fees and dues. Another thing to consider as this deadline creeps up on us, because they are due September 30th, is the process that your chapter has to take to transfer that money. If your chapter keeps your money with a campus office, like a bursar's office, you might need to take some extra time to communicate with them. So make sure you plan for that, especially since they may not be as available this semester since they're not in person. If your chapter is using PayPal or Venmo, those require that you wait a few days. Sometimes they're really fast, sometimes they're really slow. So give yourself a few days for those transfers to make it from your PayPal or Venmo account into your actual bank account, because we do not want to try and send money to nationals before the payment is actually ready. Because then you get overdraft fees and it's a huge mess. Not fun. So make sure that you give yourself some extra time. I have budgeted here submitting at least a week in advance, but make sure as soon as possible that you get that money transferred. All right, and then we have our chapter budget and constitution, which are also due. These are important to start really early. They're not due until October 16th, but because you are going to be writing a new budget, potentially very, very different from the one that you wrote last semester, and you may have a lot of constitutional changes, you'll have to budget time to write those things, and then time for the chapter to vote on those things. So I would suggest at minimum that these need to be ready for a vote at least 2 weeks before the due date. Try to do it earlier, because in case your chapter shows up to vote and they don't have quorum the day that you plan to vote, or if the chapter reads your budget and constitution and they want to make some time-consuming changes, they may need some more time for you to adjust what you wrote and have them vote again. So try and do that really early as well. I have it recommended in here that you need to vote by the 2nd of October, which means that you should start preparing your budget and constitution at least by the 18th of September, if not earlier. So definitely, especially for quarter schools, think about that well in advance. All right, are we good to move on to the next month here? All right, and feel free to stop me at any time, because this is a lot of really intense information, and I will be providing a lot of resources afterwards, but it can be a little bit overwhelming, so let me know. On to October, it looks like a lot of things, but a lot of it is the same as the last months. You have your CPR for those of you who have not already completed it with semester schools. You also have your membership candidate registration if you haven't completed that already. Some chapters start kind of late. That's okay, as long as you get everything done on time, it's all good. Then we have the chapter budget and constitution. I have in here the emails for Sarah and Alexis. I'll also be sending those out in my documents after this presentation. But both of those emails need to receive both of the voted upon budget and constitution for the year. Try and get those submitted nice and early so that you don't have to stress about it. And that does also help you earn your first stripe for Focus on 5. So that's really awesome. I've also put on here for the Focus on 5 stripe, I've added focusing on that risk management training at the beginning of the month. Keep in mind that with risk management and voting on the chapter budget and voting on the chapter constitution, you might have a lot of things that you'll need to fit into your October. So try and get those things done nice and early. Don't leave risk management training until the night of the 15th, because you may also have to be voting on things at that point. And then the next thing that you're going to start focusing on is the fall activity report, which is due December 1st. This does give you a fair amount of time, but since this is one of our more intensive reports, you will need to make sure that you get started hopefully mid-October to end of October. Also consider that getting started early is better, especially for this one, because you'll be running into things like Thanksgiving break. If your school also takes a fall break, this is also right around the time that a lot of schools have midterms and then finals right during this period. So plan ahead for that, not only for yourselves to make it easier on your own planning and writing, but also for your sponsor and DOB. This is one that requires your sponsor and DOB to approve it to be considered on time. So make sure that you give them enough time, and they may be dealing with finals too, just like you with grading and everything. So make sure you take that into account and give them a little bit of space. All right. And on to November. This one's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot that happens in November. It's mostly just working on your fall activity report and preparing your spring MEP. You'll also need initiate registration if you're starting your 3rd degree during November, depending on when you started doing your classes and your module and everything. So you'll want to make sure that you're prepared for the initiate registration, and you'll also be sure to give heads up to all of these initiates on the fees. Again, $125 plus whatever portion of the chapter fee you're charging them, plus whatever things you may charge them for chapter activities, can be a lot, especially for somebody who is just starting out in a new organization. They've just gotten initiated, they're really excited, and then you drop this bomb on them that they owe you, say, $150. That's a lot to just throw at them at the last minute. So it's really important that you discuss this fee as part of your membership education and throughout the weeks leading up to it. Give them lots of reminders so that they're not caught off guard and feeling like you've tricked them. All right. And then we have the fall activity report that we're preparing for. That is something that you will need lots of time for. And again, consider Thanksgiving is right here. Some schools, I know my school has fall break like right around here or end of October. So think about how that will affect you and how that will affect the chapter officers you have helping you with that paperwork. And then also make sure that you have your spring MEP. VPMs are responsible for this one. There will be some forms sent out to them at some point soon. It may be the same form that they filled out in the fall. And by the fall, I mean by tomorrow. But that will be if you are taking a spring class, just the same thing as the fall one, just adapted to the next semester. But you will want to start preparing for that one because it does require you to have some documents ready and some plans in advance. So when you sit down to write that form, you may find yourself stuck at some point if you don't have everything ready. All right, is everyone good to move on to December? All right. December also looks a little chaotic, but again, don't worry, it's a lot of the same stuff. We have our spring membership education plan and fall activity report that are both due on the 1st. So don't let those dates sneak up on you. It can be really easy to focus on the month that you're in and not think about the month that's coming up next until you're all of a sudden on December 1st and you have all this stuff due. So be sure to plan ahead for those. Also keep in mind that you'll need to submit a graduating senior report and an officer and chapter update if you have graduating seniors or elections. And then also start considering these other items, the academic achievement program. Be sure to submit that at the end of your semester. And don't forget to submit a podium submission if you have an article in mind that you could get published nationally. That would be really cool. We would love to see the Western District represented, so definitely do it if you can. Something important to think about with December, there's a lot of time in December where people are going to be gone. Don't expect a lot of work to happen during December. People will be going on vacations, there will be bowl games, national championships. Hopefully, we'll see how football turns out this year. But hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, you could have people, even in November, leaving for bowl games, championships, all sorts of other stuff is happening. People are going away on vacation, so don't expect people to be attending things, going to ritual after finals, any of that. Make sure you give people enough time during December to kind of take a break. All right, how are we doing? We good? Awesome. On to January. January also, I've noted, depending on what your terms look like for your school, you may be doing your graduating senior report in January. You may also be doing an officer and chapter update during this time. And if you take your class nice and early for the spring, you may be having your membership candidate registration. So just keep those things in mind. Another thing that you'll notice has popped up in January is having travel plans for States Days. States Days is not necessarily an event that you fly to, and it's not something that you book a hotel for, but you still want to make those plans nice and early in advance. That'll be coming up as early as beginning of March. And so this is you've got a solid month, maybe 6 weeks buffer here that you want to be starting to talk to people in your chapter about. Are you going to this event? Will you need a ride? Who of us is able to drive? Who of us has a vehicle? Questions like that are things you need to start asking nice and early so that you don't get down to 2 weeks in advance and realize suddenly you have 8 people who want to go and none of them have a car. So make sure to plan that one ahead. And then February is also not too bad, not too much going on. This is a good time to host a lot of projects between January and February because everyone's come out of football season. They're not busy with games every weekend, but basketball season is still just starting to pick up. We're not getting into any tournaments or anything. So this is a good time when you don't have a lot of band obligations that you can try and schedule some other stuff. Important things to think of here are membership candidate registration if you need to, depending on your chapter. Another thing to think about is States Days. We're going to try and have everyone get registered, or at least whatever RSVP system that chapter who's hosting wants to use nice and early. Now this is, depending on when we have States Days, this is 3 weeks in advance, 4 weeks in advance maybe. So they'll start sending out information around that about where you should expect to be at what times, and they're going to want to know who all is coming, if that all makes sense. Other things to look into at this time. WDC is not until April, and mid to late April at that. However, if you are looking for financial aid, because this event does require you to stay in a hotel and may require you to fly depending on your travel plans for your chapter, you may need some help financially. So it's a good idea to look into what options your university may offer. And I will talk about those a little bit more later, but definitely consider checking if there are some grants for leadership training, fine arts activities, or club activities. These might be run by your School of Music, by your university in general, the financial aid office, or your student government. And these often do require an extensive application or at least some pretty far advanced notice. So you may need to consider submitting these as early as 2 months before the event. So you'll want to start looking into this at the very least by February, but try and look in as early as possible in case there is a process that takes a couple of days or a couple of weeks. All right, these can be pretty useful funds, definitely though. Omicron has won them a couple times and they have covered part or all of our hotel costs. They've covered registration fees, air travel, they'll pay for some of your gas, but you will need to keep receipts and you will have to get that approval before you travel. So definitely plan in advance for that because it can be a huge help to your chapter. Other things that are happening this month, you'll notice you should ask for a letter of recommendation to run for district office. We would really love to see several people run for district office this year. Lots of applicants would be fantastic. Definitely, I can't stay here forever, so I would love to leave the district with some of you fantastic leaders. So around this time is a good opportunity to start thinking about letters of recommendation. In order to run for office, you do need a letter of rec from your chapter sponsor and one from your chapter. It also helps to have them from other sisters and brothers and other people who can speak for your TBS experience and your skills as a leader. So definitely start asking people around then. At least 4 weeks in advance is really good to ask for a letter of recommendation so that it gives those people a chance to make time for it. You are asking a service of them that they ordinarily would not be fitting into their schedule. So you're going to want to give them plenty of time to find a good opportunity for that. It's also a good idea, if you haven't had to ask for a letter before, to put in a list, some sort of a brief resume for this person, especially if your chapter sponsor is someone you don't know super well. They may not realize how involved you are. They may not know which committees you're in charge of. They may not know that you're actually the treasurer of another club and you've been the president of some other organization for a long time. Those are all important experience points that could be really beneficial to you as an applicant for district office, but that your sponsor may not know well enough to write a letter for you about them. So definitely give them some of those tips before you apply. One thing to note is that district officer applications are really not that complicated. They sound kind of intimidating, and there's not a ton of information about them available a lot of times because it's hard to find examples on our Facebook page of what those actually look like. But we will be hosting, as a district office, a lot of information sessions about this. We'll be helping you out with this process because it's really not that complicated if you have somebody to tell you what it's like. Those applications do require, so that you can get prepared, July is early, but it's good to start thinking early. You will need a cover letter, a resume. You'll need your goals for the term, which is your platform for what you'll be doing in the next year. You'll also need a letter of recommendation from your chapter and one from your sponsor. And there is a short questionnaire about the position you're applying for that's a little more specific to what that office is. So make sure that you are thinking about those things well in advance. February is a great time to start writing that. March is a really good time to announce that you're running because you will be hanging out with your sisters at state stays. So great time to tell them all, hey, I'm running for office. Do you guys have any questions about my platform? Do you want to talk to me about what I'm going to do this year? So really good time to start writing all that stuff here in February. Does anyone have any questions before we move to March? All right, so March is where things start to get a little bit crazier again with our district conventions coming up. So be sure to plan a little bit around how to have events without conflicting with district events, but also be sure that you keep basketball schedules in mind and other pep band sports. I know my school does gymnastics pep band and volleyball pep band and things like that. Those things are really starting to get in people's way right around here. In a good way, we love participating in pep band, but they will make it more difficult for you to plan any events. So be aware of that. One thing here to look at is the national awards nominations are due March 1st. So if you do have anyone that your chapter would like to nominate, definitely submit that by this time. And again, those nominations, as far as we are mostly involved, are largely for the Baton Award for an active member who has been particularly outstanding in service and leadership. And then you also have the chapter sponsor who you can nominate. So those are two really big things to look at around then. There are also lots of other awards. These are just the ones that I pulled as they were most likely relevant to you guys. And then we also have a note here about the 4th grader practice. So 4th grader practice is a LIAR piece. It's something that I haven't talked a lot about in this section because we did go over all of our projects in greater detail yesterday in Hannah's session. However, it is important to consider planning ahead for this one. It's something that can sneak up on you. You do need to participate in at least 3 months of 4th grader practice So starting on March 1st or March 2nd is really the latest that you can get started in order to meet that expectation. So don't forget that one, because that one's pretty important. And then you'll also want to focus on district awards as well. Start thinking about nominating people by the 17th at the latest, because those district awards for this separate side at least will be due on the 31st. One thing that the district council has been thinking about is maybe chapter committees who design all of your nominations would be great. Those people might have really good experience as a group discussing what those qualifications are. One person may remember something that the other person forgot. So discussing those things as a committee might be really helpful to submit really thoughtful, well done nominations. One thing also with nominations that Hannah mentioned yesterday that I'd really like to remind you guys is that we can only consider what was written in the nomination when we're considering who wins. So there are some really amazing leaders in our district that we sure think deserve an award. But if we don't receive a nomination for them, or that nomination doesn't discuss all of the great things that they did, then we can't consider them as fully as maybe they deserve. So be sure to write a really solid nomination for each of these people so that we can get some really amazing awards given out. And then we also have a reminder to apply for district office. You're going to want to do this around March 26th is my estimate. We'll release a specific date a little bit closer to the event, as we are, only in July right now. But that is something to keep in your mind. And then also, have you registered for WC? WC you will need to register for. You will also need to book a hotel for that at some point. So we will be submitting a little bit more information on that, on what those due dates are. Let's start thinking about that in March. One important thing to think about with registration and hotels is that in order to book the hotel, you do need to know exactly who is going. So if there are people who are like, oh, I don't know yet, I'm going to decide next month. Well, you can't decide 3 weeks out, I'm going to go when I said last week I didn't want to. You have to know in advance. There may be some room that you have for another person, but you do need to know as much as possible who all is coming by mid-March. All right. And then on to April. April is a good time to start thinking about scholarship applications. Those are due on May 1st. Again, with the letter of recommendation for this one, some of these scholarships do require letters of rec, and the rule of thumb is, at least a month in advance, let people know that you want this from them and try to give them some resources to help them write a good letter for you. Those scholarship applications, we have already talked a little bit about what scholarships those are. They are all available on the national website, so definitely give those a look, and don't forget to apply to them nice and early, because a lot of people think about them, once May hits and then it's already too late. Other things happening this month are initiate registration. If you're completing the 3rd degree, you'll want to take care of that. So make sure that you get the fee in for all of the new initiates, and make sure that you get all of their signatures and everything, because the initiate registration and the membership candidate registration both need their signatures. So don't forget that one. Additionally, you'll also want to pay attention to convention. Yay! So this is when we'll all be hanging out together right here. You'll want to make sure that you've hosted your National Intercollegiate Band auditions before that period. So get those done nice and early. But then the 16th through 18th, you'll be hanging out with us in Seattle. We're so excited. It's going to be fantastic. I've never been this excited for a WC, and I'm always very excited. So we've got some really good plans already. And again, it's only July. So that is shaping up to be a really great event. And I think that's everything for April. Yep. Yes, I have in my notes, WC is happening. Be there, be square. Definitely. At least have a delegate there so that they can speak on behalf of your chapter. Especially since our district only has the 8 chapters, having a delegate there makes a big difference. All right, we're on May, yes? Again with the initiate registration, which I'm sounding a bit like a broken record, but I have put these dates in here just in case. If you haven't, initiated your members by now, it is possible that you'll initiate them this month, and I don't want anyone to forget that paperwork. You may also be coming up on graduating seniors and officer updates, so be sure to submit those. And then also, this is time to really start thinking about your CSR. It should be getting really close at this point. This is, again, one of our bigger items of paperwork. It's very similar to the one in the fall. One thing to consider here is that this is a tricky time to do paperwork. You're going through officer transitions. This may make it really hard because you might not be sure which council, outgoing or incoming, is responsible for the paperwork. You may have paperwork that's half completed by the outgoing council and the new council doesn't know how to complete it. And additionally, if you have not already completed your officer and chapter update, that CSR can only be updated by the current council in OMRS. So if you have not updated who that council is with the officer and chapter update, the new council will not be able to edit the CSR. So that could get in your way if you don't think ahead on that one, which most people are not, really aware that that's going to be an issue, but it's something that came up this year that was a little bit of a surprise. So keep that one in mind. An option that you have if you are waiting for your officer and chapter update to be approved is to go ahead and start a draft of the CSR in a shared Google document that both councils can see so that everyone can contribute. And then that information can be copied into the CSR. So that is something that you can do. I would definitely recommend both councils work together on this one. The outgoing council knows all the things that happened in the spring semester because they planned them. The incoming council might not know all that information. They also don't really know what a CSR looks like yet because they just got into office, within the last week. So they're going to need some help. So try and plan so that both councils can work on that. Do we have any questions so far before we start talking about our last convention items here?
No questions, but a quick time check. It is 4:05 p.m.
Oh man, it is.
And this is room 1, so I'm not sure if there are people waiting for a social hour. Is there anyone in the waiting room?
That is possible. Man, time flies. If you guys would like to stay, you are welcome to. I will go over these last few events for the convention. Otherwise, you are welcome to head on out. Please just make sure that you come to the award ceremony tonight if you can. That's definitely going to be a fantastic event. All right, our last few items here, National Convention. Make sure that you book your flight nice and early for that one because it is in Michigan. So you're gonna wanna be very prepared to attend that one. And then signature also, if we are hosting that in person, maybe we'll host it in virtual, not really sure yet. But if that is happening, we will be letting you know in May. So you will start making plans around then. And then we have the last items here. Focus on 5 is all pretty much due in June, all of those last items. And you'll want to make sure that you are registering for NatCon and signature around here and starting to make those travel plans. All right. And then July is just go to National Convention. Please, it'll be really fun. We're celebrating our 75th. It'll be awesome. All right. Now we're wrapping up. 6 minutes late. We're good. Does anyone have any questions? Presidents also do expect more guidance on this from me as the year goes on. We will be having a meeting next month where we will be chatting a little bit more. So if you have any questions now though, definitely ask them.
I don't have a question, but I do have something I want to make sure you all know that was shared with vice presidents. Okay. That was ridiculous timing. I wanted to make sure you know if, wow. Okay, take 2. So vice presidents were told that if you don't have a fall class, but you have fall recruitment, you must submit your MEP before your first recruitment event. So that's really important because those recruitment events have to be approved by me and Alexis before they start. So if you know you're gonna have a spring class, but you have recruitment starting, let's say, middle of September, the MEP must be submitted to us before, and you want to give us a week. If you can give us 2 weeks, we would appreciate that. Sorry for the noise.
All right, any other questions before we let the social hour get started? Awesome. Well, thank you guys for all coming and listening to me talk nonstop for a little over an hour about dates. As you can tell, I love them very much and will be happy to talk to you about dates at any time. Please do feel free to send me an email or text me or call me, really anything, because I would love to talk to anybody, whether you're an officer or a member of a chapter, about any of these upcoming exciting things or really anything else TBS. Thank you all again for coming.